Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Sweet Baby Ray and Zorn Hub Show. I'm your co-host, Andrew Zorn,
And I'm your co-host, Ray Burrows.
and today we have a special guest.
I am John Nattiello, a.k.a. JNasty, and I am a 49ers fan, Yankees fan, and Clippers fan.
Well, thank you for coming on the show today, John. We got a very, very, very interesting topic today. The most disappointing teams of our lifetime. We're going to give it the year around 2007 and on, from which we can remember of those teams you watched, teams you remember playing.
Teams that had expectations.
But did not secure the bag. They couldn't get it done. Right? What other background do you want to give for this topic today? Because there's a top five.
This was,
It's going to get heated for some of it, I know.
So rankings are kind of what I like to do. This was, last week we did UFC for a special topic. Rankings are something I like to do. This is something along the lines of teams that came in the year either with expectations, made moves either in the draft or free agency, or had a really good year the previous year and just completely tanked it out the next year. So that is the criteria for this list.
I couldn't say any better. And with that, I say we get into it. Ray, I'm going to have you start off with your number 5. We're all going to give our 5s and move on to 4.
My number 5 might come as a surprise. I'm going to go with the 2017 Oakland Raiders.
Okay.
Now, people forget the 2016 season, the Raiders went 12-4. It was Derek Carr's third year as the quarterback, Jack Del Rio's second year as the head coach. They had young weapon like Amari Cooper, who was second year really looking promising, like he was going to be one of the best receivers in the league for a decade. Latavius Murray had a really good year, and the defense led by Khalil Mack, who was a force that year, was the best defense in football. Come 2016, the end of the year, week 16, Derek Carr, breaks his foot.
Yeah.
And they start Matt McGloin, who was a decent backup in week 17. He gets hurt, so they have to start practice squatter Connor Cook. Anyone remember Connor Cook from Michigan State?
No.
Exactly. Well, I remember him, but they had to start him against the Texans, and they lost. But the next year, they come back with promise. Latavius Murray went to the Minnesota Vikings in free agency, but they got a guy like Marshawn Lynch, who came out of retirement to play with this team because they were young and promising. What happened was they were 6-10. The defense regressed. Carr and Cooper did not look as good as they did the year before. Michael Crabtree did not look as good as the year before. And that was kind of the start of the end for Michael Crabtree. And ever since, the Raiders have been trying to find that form in 2016. I remember that year because the Raiders were the best team in football for the first 14 weeks. They gave up home field advantage when Carr went down and McGloin went down, and the Chiefs were number 1 seed. But coming into 2017, everyone expected the Raiders to continue to be that team. They were the young and up-and-coming team. Jack Del Rio was a good coach. He got fired after the 2017 season because they couldn't run the ball. The defense, which is Del Rio's specialty, was getting shredded. Derek Carr didn't look like he was progressing. And that's the year. Year 4 is the year where you're supposed to, especially if you've had success, go over the hump. And instead they regressed. They were supposed to be what the Kansas City Chiefs are now, and they're not. So my number 5 is the 2017 Oakland Raiders.
I really like that pick. I'm be completely honest. I would not have seen that coming. That team had Crabtree, Cooper, and Jared Cook and Marshawn Lynch as the weapons, and a pretty stout O-line as well. And we were very high on Derek Carr, and that's it's kind of shifted today. Like this young, promising quarterback, he's going to win a lot of games, second-round pick. And now we're looking at Derek Carr is he really the quarterback we thought he was? Looking back at that year was a catalyst, which switched everything for that team. The Raiders haven't performed up to expectations. Derek Carr at the time got a big contract, no longer really viewed as that way, and it just shows that the expectations we kind of put on these guys, when they aren't fulfilled, like they haven't been, we're now seeing Derek Carr on a hot seat where there have been talks about, will this be his last year in Oakland? Do they want to move on from him? And I think that's really important to look at because this was the year that kind of brought it all to life.
And I think what's important to note, too, is I think everyone was fooled. I think if you would have polled 95% of those listeners, and it's easy to forget about it now because the Raiders have been very average since. I know they made the playoffs last year, but they've been very average since. But that year, we really thought, and I know it was a big thing because they were calling Amari Cooper and Derek Carr AC/DC, and the Raiders are back, and it's the reincarnation of the 70s Raiders. And, that obviously wasn't the case in 2017. Going 6-10 was just the year to really put them back.
I think that the Raiders look like they're always in rebuild mode. I feel like they keep on switching their players year after year, and I kind of think that's part of the reason why they're so disappointing, because they have a lot of young talent at times, but I mean, like you said, Amari Cooper, Derek Carr, when Marshawn Lynch came back, everyone was expecting big numbers, and I agree completely, actually. I forgot about how good that team was on paper.
But remember, he retired. Marshawn Lynch retired very unceremoniously. He chose to come back and play for this team. He could have stayed retired. So I think that's important to note. I think we should move on. Zorn, you want to give us your number 5? I know you've been bragging about there's some surprise picks here.
Well, this was the team I told you I was thinking about putting 1, but I actually have them at 5.
Okay.
And you really did change my mind on them, so I got to give great credit to this. It's the 2007 New England Patriots. I wanted to switch them up. And I know you're going to say they're not a disappointment because they won 16 games. It's bad. But they lost the biggest game of all. And they lost to a Giants team, which was a wild card team, which no one saw this coming. I know, and we all give Eli Manning. He's like, in the playoffs, a great quarterback. He's the reason. Playoff Eli, kind of like playoff Joe and like Joe Flacco that we always talk about. But let's just be honest. This team had Tom Brady, had Wes Welker, Randy Moss. He had an amazing season with them, 23 touchdowns. Kyle Brady, Ben Watson on offense. Defense, you had Vince Wilfork, Mike Vrabel, and you also had Asante Samuel, other guys in there as well. This team didn't perform to the expectations we had for it. We wanted to see a perfect season. This was the team that no one could beat. And they lost to a wild card team. Now, if they lost to a team that had clinched their division, a team that had, was the best record in the NFC, that'd be totally different. But this one it's always going to be that kind of one mark on Tom Brady's record in one game. I think Tom Brady's always won back. And there's no doubt. Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time, and we're now seeing troubles with him in Tampa. But if there's one game that kind of holds Brady down, or it's like that little smudge on his record, it's this one. And that's, to me, is why they're 5. They're not high up. But this team should have won the Super Bowl, and Eli Manning played amazing. But that team, the New York Giants, did not deserve to win that Super Bowl.
John, before you get started, can I rebut that?
Absolutely.
I think I did a good job talking you out of 1. Because we discussed it and you said that team needs to be on there. The reason that team shouldn't be on there is if you want to say disappointing or devastating losses, which is a list we could do, that should be on there because that's a devastating loss at 16-0. What I'm saying is no team since has gone 16-0. And the records that they set ushered in a new era of passing. That is still Tom Brady's best statistical season. That is still Randy Moss. That made Randy Moss the first ballot Hall of Famer after he'd fallen off in Oakland and not had really good season toward the end of Minnesota. That was the season that made Wes Welker the prototypical slot guy. That was the year where the Patriots dynasty became hated like it did. It wasn't because they won 3 Super Bowls. It was because that was the year where everyone heard about Spygate and stuff, and the Patriots came out and went 16-0 and shut everyone up. Yes, they didn't win the big game, but let's be honest. In hindsight, it looks better because the Patriots then lost again to the Giants with a significantly worse squad. And I think the Giants team in 2007 was better than the team in 2011.
I agree with that.
Mm-hmm. And what I'm saying is I don't think you can put that on this list as a season as a whole. It's a whole season. To go 16-0, that's one thing. That is just the best. That might be the best regular season any team's ever. It is the best regular season anybody's ever had. And they were just blowing teams out. And I understand that the loss is devastating. But in terms of the season, it's not.
But that's why they're 5. And
there's got to be more. The 2017 Raiders are definitely more disappointing than that team. They won 16-0.
Here's my point. Yes, they won all the games that they should have won, but it ended with the game they needed to win, and the most important game of all that would have reassured us as the best team of all time, which on paper it looks like. And statistically, you're saying best offense of all time, but
it's not the best offense of all time.
Okay, it's up there though. But we're saying Brady's best year, Moss's best year, Welker's breakout year. Okay, this team, and this is what kind of shows a good team versus a great team. You got to win the games you got to win, and this was the game. And that's why I have them at 5, simply because they lost to a team which no one expected to win. No one saw this team making it out of the wild card or even divisional round, and they go to the Super Bowl and they win it. They had every advantage, and they didn't win with an offense that was a powerhouse.
Can I make one more point, John, before you come in? Because I know you're our guest and you haven't talked a lot yet.
No, that's okay.
This is
you're good.
The reason you would be correct if the Patriots never made another Super Bowl. But the Patriots since have been the 5. They've won 3. Tom Brady has put his stamp as the GOAT. Bill Belichick has put his stamp as the greatest coach ever. And think about it. If you want to say that it's disappointing because Randy Moss never won a Super Bowl with Tom Brady, I would agree. But that was not one of your major points. The point I'm making is most devastating losses, this is absolutely included. Most devastating, disappointing seasons, it is not.
Well, John, go ahead. I want to give you a time.
No, actually, that's exactly what I was going to say. It is a very devastating loss because, obviously, like you said, this is the game that Tom Brady wants back, 100%. But like Ray said, they went to 5 more Super Bowls, won 3. The Patriots were still very relevant year after year, and it didn't really put a stamp on the downfall of the Patriots. The downfall of the Patriots was after Tom Brady left, and I think Tom Brady and Belichick both showed that they're the best at what they do of all time in the following years after. I don't think that really made them fall off.
Here's what I'll say real quick. When we talk about like GOATs in sports, like, for me, what names come up, I think Tom Brady, I think MJ, and I really think Tiger Woods. Like, for me, those are like the big 3 that come up. We always compare in basketball everyone to MJ, and for me, I compare everyone to MJ, and that's at the 6-0 record. I know Tom Brady's had Super Bowl losses, but nothing as career, as defining of a loss as that one. I know Brady had an amazing comeback win against the Falcons, and that kind of erases a lot of like the draws with that. But when I'm comparing greats of all time, and this is a GOAT who should have won this game on paper, and by the seasons they had in the regular season, they should have won it hands down, no problem. And he lost it, and I guess it's a devastating loss, but it's the most important game of the year, and it's what defines the season. And therefore, if you're 16-0, you're perfect. And that one loss, if it's a week 3 game, okay, cool, yeah, it doesn't really matter, right? It's a great season. But if it's the Super Bowl, the most important game of all time that takes you there, the reason why you assemble this roster, you put all the money out there, you assemble these guys, you invest hours and hours of hours into a team, and they lose the one game that they have to win. Therefore, to me, that's a devastating season because that's the only game that truly matters.
My point here would be that when you are comparing GOATs, you cannot do that through different sports. It is much harder to win championships in the NFL than any other sport because it's one game. Baseball, basketball, you get a 7-game series. NHL, you get a 7-game series. In football, think about it. You win the Super Bowl, you could have played now it's 21 games. You know what I mean? It's 21 games and your season's over. So I think that is important, but I disagree with you because I think any season as historic as that season cannot be considered disappointing. And with that, I think we should leave it there.
We can agree to disagree.
We can agree to disagree. John, what is your number 5?
So my number 5, I actually I decided to go with the 2019 Browns.
Okay, I actually thought of them too. It's a good pick.
They ended up going 6-10 that year and finishing 3rd in the AFC North, and that was the year. It was a young Baker. He was hot. He was the talk of the town, and you had a young Nick Chubb. Odell just came over. Him and Jarvis Landry. Everyone said they had the chemistry from college. Nick Chubb put up 1,500 rushing yards that season. Baker Mayfield threw 22 touchdowns and 21 interceptions. Jarvis Landry and OBJ both put up well over 1,000 receiving yards each. And they also had people like Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, Morgan Burnett. And everyone was very excited for this team, I think. Because the Browns were never good. Ever.
They were 2 years removed from 0-16.
Yes. They were never good. We all thought that this was going to be the year that the Browns could come out and make a playoff appearance, potentially. I really thought that they were going to at least get to like a divisional round, but not at all. That wasn't the case at all. They ended up going 6-10, and I think that a lot of people were shaking their heads at that because on paper, this team was disgusting.
Well, I think what's important to note is this is a really good pick, John, because the Browns ushered in this new era of bringing in free agents to solve all your problems, like what the Broncos are doing. We see how that works out, like the Raiders are doing, like other teams have done. And the problem is when you bring in free agents to solve holds, it doesn't do anything because you build your team through the draft. You only get free agents if they are the missing link. And the problem was, I know that in 2018, the Browns showed life at the end of the year under Greg Williams. So the problem was they hired Freddie Kitchens, who was not a head coach. He was bad. He was only there 1 year. And the problem, it just showed that the lack of depth they had. Because when you name all the guys on the roster, they look great. But the problem is who's in the trenches, who's their linemen, who are the guys in the secondary, who are their no-name linebackers. And that's why I think the defense that year, the secondary got torched, I believe.
Yes, they did.
And 6-10 in the AFC North is, but that's a good one because I really thought, I was one of those believers that thought maybe they could be a worst to first type story.
Yes, I agree completely. I was very hopeful that season for them, and I'm no Browns lover, but they were the joke for a long time. Everyone's like, oh, at least I'm not a Browns fan.
I will say this real quick. There's two statistics that stand out to me about why this team disappointed so much. It's 21 interceptions from Baker Mayfield, and it's Odell having a good year for a receiver-wise, but not an Odell year, which we haven't seen Odell ever return to full form. Yeah, 1,035 yards receiving, not bad. But four touchdowns for a guy who's like maybe a second round pick. He's second year in the league, third year in the league. Okay, yeah, that's pretty decent. But we're talking about Odell Beckham, the guy who's kind of changed the receiver position forever. He's brought back this kind of flashy receiver play we've seen, one-handed catches. And yes, like that doesn't win you games. That doesn't mean you're the best receiver ever. But it means like there's talent-wise, and it shows how talented receivers are now. That receivers are replaceable, right? And we kind of learned this from Odell, was that they go out and get the star receiver, and it didn't really contribute anything to your offense. Yes, he had 1,000 yards, he had 4 touchdowns, but
that's DJ Moore numbers.
Yeah, DJ Moore. I'm saying it's not Odell Beckham numbers that we saw in New York, and he's never been able to, I don't think, return that because of injuries and stuff like that. Jarvis Landry, who was number 2 receiver, had better yards than him. And that shows, and we heard about in practice, Odell Beckham's uncle leaking film in practice of him being wide open, not getting the ball, how much drama was associated with this team. That just goes back to bad coaching. That means that you did not have control of the locker room, Ray, and that
you didn't,
and that you're allowing someone's uncle, your star receiver's uncle, to post practice footage on his Twitter page. That is bad. That is mismanagement by ownership and by coaching staff.
I think that's more of Odell's had that problem his whole career.
Yes.
Odell, is one of the more talented receivers to come out of college the last 15 years. But I will say at times we have overrated the talent. Odell Beckham at times was a top 5 receiver. But once he got to Cleveland, they never got top 10 production out of him. No. They never got the guy they traded for. So I think that was the start of you bringing in outside guys. It might not always work, and that's the definition of it backfiring. So,
and one word I want to give to that team is immaturity. A lot of young guys, and that's on the starting roster and starting positions. Mayfield was 24, Nick Chubb was 24 years old. Garrett, 24. Denzel Ward, 22. Just shows that this team, yes, talent-wise was there, paper-wise there, but they didn't have the experience they needed or the maturity they needed to win the games that they should have.
And we're still waiting for the Browns to recover from that.
Exactly.
So, Zorn, you want to give your number 4?
Number 4, the 2017-2018 Thunder. We talk about big acquisitions. You have Westbrook there. This is the fallout of Kevin Durant. This is a huge change for this team. And we're talking about, there's 4 really big guys on this team. Westbrook, Paul George, Carmelo Anthony, Steven Adams. And we were expecting this team to be, pushing the conference finals. We were expecting this team to do big things. And to me, the biggest thing that I think comes to mind when I think this team is spacing. There was all these, other than Steven Adams, there was 3 guys who were scorers, ball-dominant players. And they could not gel well together. Melo being in the starting rotation, pushed to the bench. He still had that massive contract to make him a bench player after that. Paul George and Westbrook, they looked good together, but we've come to know now that Westbrook, and I'm a huge Westbrook fan.
This was Westbrook at his prime.
Yes, in prime. Yes. He has to have the ball, and everything has to go through him or it's trouble. And we're now seeing that with the Lakers. And this is going to be a common theme I think you're going to see in my list with Westbrook, is that Westbrook is a great statistical player and energizer bunny for a team, but he is not a team player. And that hurts me to say, simply because since Kevin Durant has left, we have not seen him do anything playoff-wise that we expected from him for a guy who has arguably statistically a Hall of Fame career.
Absolutely.
I just want to push back on this. I don't think it's fair to call Westbrook not a team player, because until he got to the Lakers, everyone had talked glowingly of Westbrook. But I will get to that point later. I will say this on that team. That team's failure was not on Paul George and Russell Westbrook. That was one of Paul George's best seasons. That's what made him back in the top 10 conversation after his injury to playing for Team USA. I believe Paul George came in third in MVP voting that year. Mm-hmm. He averaged 28 points a game. Westbrook was still putting up damn near triple-double numbers. And the thing that comes to mind is you're right about spacing to an extent. It's also depth. It shows how much depth you need in the NBA.
John?
I agree 100%. I think that you took the words out of my mouth because I think that team did not gel well together. And I actually was considering that team for my top 5 as well for that exact reason. Because with these players, we're expecting a run. I was expecting a run with that team.
And maybe not a finals win, but at least close to a finals appearance.
Yes.
What's important to note, too, is these are 3 guys that have never won. They're 3 guys. Carmelo Anthony's whole career has never been a winner. It's a big thing that I have with Carmelo Anthony is Carmelo Anthony has made moves for Carmelo Anthony, not himself. Russell Westbrook has been the closest to winning it. And Russell Westbrook, the first couple years after Durant left, was the guy who carried that team. His 2016, 2017, this is coming off Russell Westbrook's MVP season. Mm-hmm. That's the most disappointing part. You're getting MVP Russ. And then Paul George having this season. Carmelo Anthony is what tore this team apart. Carmelo Anthony, this was the start of the decline where, if he's not putting up 30, 35 shots a game, he's not scoring 25 anymore. If he's only shooting 18 shots, he might have 14 to 16 points. And he's not good enough defensively to keep on the court for 40 minutes anymore. And that's where we've seen Carmelo Anthony's career go. So I think that's a good pick. That's the reason I didn't consider him is because of the winning aspect. Mm-hmm. But it's a good pick, Zorn. John, you want to give us your number 4?
So my number 4 is the 2018-2019 Philadelphia Eagles.
Okay.
And I say this because this is them coming off of a Super Bowl win. And I just want to say they haven't done anything even remotely close to that season other than this year. This year they're looking good. But the next season they went 9-7 and were second in the NFC.
But they made the playoffs.
Oh, yeah, they lost in the divisional round.
But they made the playoffs. They won a wild card game.
Yes, but I think that team, they lost LeGarrette Blount, they lost Torrey Smith, but they had rookie Dallas Goedert, they had Zach Ertz, they had Nelson Aguilar, Alshon Jeffrey, and with Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox. I mean, the defense was looking solid, everyone was looking solid, and even since, we can talk about they've gone 9-7, 9-7, 4-11-1, and 9-8. 2 times they've been to the playoffs since, or 3 times, I'm sorry. And they lost in the divisional round. They lost in 2 wildcard games. I think that team coming out of that Super Bowl was looking to win like 2 or 3 in the next 4 years.
If I could jump in,
yes.
I totally disagree with you. The reason for that is a team that whole playoffs, even though they were good in the regular season until they lost Wentz, were underdogs. They went 13-3. I understand that. The NFC East was not good that year. They won the whole Super Bowl as underdogs. Nick Foles played the game of his life in the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. I did not leave that game. I know a lot of Philly fans who did not leave that game thinking it was a dynasty, that they were going to win a couple more Super Bowls. I never thought they were going to get back to one. And I thought Carson Wentz would have been a career Eagle at that time. But he got hurt, and then at the moment when Nick Foles won them a playoff game again, that's when I went, okay, maybe Foles should start here and they move on from Wentz. Because Foles was still young enough that he could be the starter for the foreseeable future. Mm-hmm. But I never saw them going back to multiple Super Bowls.
I will say this because you made a point about their defense. And I can understand this pick. I wouldn't put it on my top 5, but I can understand it. This team on defense looked great, except for the secondary. I think between the secondary of the starters, there was only 4 picks. I mean, like that's the thing, and you go down. That's why you see the Darius Slay acquisition from the Detroit. Is that the front 7 dogs, back 4 now. And that was a case where I see where yes, this team on paper looked great, but the 4 guys who didn't look great, they were all in the same usually same position group, and that's what can kill you. And Carson Wentz was never the same after that injury. He really wasn't. We look at that, what happened with him. I believe it's the knee. And Carson Wentz still has not looked the same. And yes, he has put up, better numbers with Colts and Redskins since, he's come off injury. It looks like maybe he's a decent quarterback. But we were talking about Carson Wentz being a top 5 quarterback after his almost MVP considering season. He was MVP, but they were considering
If
him.
he didn't get hurt, I think he would have won it. He was the front runner when he got hurt.
Yeah. And the big point I want to make here is that we looked at what happened with the Eagles, and it was a great run. It won't happen again. What happened was there was unity in the locker room around Nick Foles. And when you see Nick Foles go, you see guys not believing in Carson Wentz. And since then, guys still don't believe in Carson Wentz. And this is also, I think, kind of the downfall year, like the last decent year of Alshon Jeffrey. And then you see him fade out. Nelson Aguilar was never really the same wide receiver. He's now been known as drops. The one thing that so disappoints is that O-line was fantastic. That O-line was, I would argue, a top 6, top 5 O-line in the league. And you would think, well, with Wentz being a guy who you need to keep off of being injured, that will be fine. But Wentz's health has always been in question.
When I think of the 2016-17 Eagles that won it all, I think of a team with destiny. Like how I thought about the Ravens in 2012. I did not think the Ravens would win another one when they won in 2012. The team with destiny, like they were destined to win that Super Bowl because they had bought into the underdog personality. And now it's just, they are who they are. They'll compete in a terrible division, but I never thought of them winning more Super Bowls.
Okay.
My number 4, I'm curious to see if you guys have this one. We're throwing it back a little bit. The 2012-2013 Los Angeles Lakers. That was the year where they went out. They already had Kobe Bryant and Pau Gasol on the team. They had Ron Artest, who I think changed his name to Metta World Peace that year. They went out and got Steve Nash, who was, at that point, if he retired, was still a first ballot Hall of Fame point guard. They went out and got Dwight Howard, who was one of my favorite players growing up. People forget Dwight Howard was arguably the best player in basketball between 2007 and 2009. 2009 through 2011. He was the man. Best big man in basketball for a decade was Dwight Howard. They got him. You barely make the playoffs. Dwight Howard and Kobe struggled the whole time they were there. I think they snuck in as a 7 seed in a very, very, very weak Western Conference that year. And Steve Nash struggled with injuries, and that was the start of the decline. Now, Dwight Howard would leave and end up going to Houston and had a couple monster years in Houston. Not like how he had in Orlando, because in Orlando he was just godly. Yeah. If he would have stayed in Orlando his whole career and put up those numbers, he'd be a top 5 center all time. But people now don't even look at Dwight Howard as a top 75 player. He was left off the list. And to me, that was shocking because Dwight Howard is the best big man in basketball since I've been alive. Now, Jokic could pass him, and I think he will. Jokic will pass him in a year. But Dwight Howard is a first ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt. He was the man for a decade. He was Defensive Player of the Year 3 times. And they were so bad on defense, this Lakers team, especially 2 years removed from winning Kobe's 5th title. This looked like them gearing up. And if Kobe wins 6, maybe Kobe, is in the GOAT conversation. So this is a disappointing team.
I love that pick. And it's a great pick because we had so much expectations for this team with Nash. And the big one, like you said, Howard. And when we all forget when Howard was in Orlando, he was Superman. He was unstoppable. Just a beast down in the paint, rebounding, scoring, greatness. And since he went to the Lakers, the scoring part has been the question around Dwight Howard.
He didn't score 30 anymore. He scored 18, 17 points a game.
And that drop is what happened. And I feel like there's so many questions around what happened. And you can say, well, it's, you're with a scorer, Kobe Bryant, and you have Steve Nash there as well. Something changed in Dwight Howard after that trade. And like you said, he was on pace to be a top 5 center of all time. And it didn't happen.
I still think he's top 10.
Yeah, and he's top 10. But the big thing around that team is what if. Because you have 3 guys right there which was assembled as basically as another big 3. And with me, it's like, yes, I would say LeBron, Wade, and Bosh started the big 3 trend, and this was a way to match them. You barely make the playoffs.
And you get bounced.
And we all thought this team was at least a conference finals team, at least.
And people forget that this basically ended Steve Nash's career. Mm-hmm. This basically
derailed Howard.
I mean,
100%.
Howard still had a good career after that for the next 5 years, but he wasn't the same. Pau Gasol, and here's the thing: everyone will talk about, Pau Gasol was old. He wasn't done because he went to Chicago and made 2 All-Star teams and played until last year. So you can't tell me Pau Gasol was done. This was the moment where people go, Kobe Bryant's not going to win another one.
Yeah. And you see that with injury, you see that with time and age and how he wasn't the same player much more following the years following. And if Kobe got the 6, I like your point, would this be different with the Kobe ranking? And I know like with Kobe dying, it kind of does we all miss the Black Mamba. It kind of does certify him as I would say top 10 for sure.
He's definitely top 10.
Some people have him higher, some people have him lower, but he's definitely top 10. Could this guarantee top 5, top 3 if he does get 6?
I don't think 3.
Mm-hmm. I think
he'd be pushing 5. Because if he gets 6, he's over Tim Duncan in my mind. That's a whole different debate. I think Tim Duncan's better than Kobe, but that's a whole different debate.
But on paper, this looks like what should be the best team Kobe's ever played with.
Correct.
Yes.
And it doesn't happen.
No, I agree completely. I don't remember that season that much, but I do remember having high expectations because that's like when I was first getting into basketball, I feel like.
Yeah, I would say same for that. I was like first in basketball.
And obviously I knew Orlando, Dwight Howard. I loved Dwight Howard as well growing up. But if I'm not mistaken, wasn't there also a bit of drama in that locker room between Dwight Howard and Kobe?
Yeah, I think, and Kobe had said this, that playing with Dwight Howard made him realize how good he had it with Shaq. Because this was when him and Shaq started to reconcile, was because I think the big thing was Shaq was, goofy, but Shaq was mature in how he conducted himself. The big question with Dwight Howard was the maturity. Now, mind you, Shaq played 3 years of college. Howard came out of high school. I think he was the last number 1 pick out of high school. But I think that was the drama there. And Kobe just played on bum teams after this.
Yeah.
So, John, you want to get us started on your third one?
So my number 3, I'm sorry to keep doing football.
You're good, buddy.
It's no more football after this, I promise. So I actually have the 2014 Seahawks. And I know it might sound a little biased.
The Malcolm Butler interception?
I'm talking about after. Well, I'm talking about that season, yes, but I'm talking about what came afterwards.
You know what? I really wish I put that on my list. That's a great pick, John.
Because ever since, that season they were 12-4, first in the NFC, and they literally threw away that Super Bowl.
Yes.
They should have won that Super Bowl. Marshawn Lynch was an absolute force. He forgot he was human for a season. He ran for 1,300 yards, 13 touchdowns, and then added another 400 receiving yards and another 4 receiving touchdowns. Wilson was arguably untouchable at that point. He was running the same amount of rush yards as...
That was his best season. He had a rushing season like Jalen Hurts is having now.
Yes, absolutely. And then, don't even get me started on Legion of Boom and that defense. That is an arguably top
5.
I would even say 3 defense of all time.
It might be the best secondary of all time. It's up there. So I get why you're putting it that high. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And I think the years to come afterwards, they just haven't done anything. They lose wild card games. I think they went to the playoffs, I believe, 4 or 5 more times.
4. I think what's interesting to note with your point is this could fill in the mold of his 16-0 Patriots of most devastating losses. But here's why it doesn't. Because this ended a potential dynasty. The Seahawks were talked about like they were going to be the team of the 2010s. Yes. And what happened after that? Soon after that, Marshawn Lynch next year suddenly retires. Mm-hmm. You got guys like Richard Sherman leaving to go to San Francisco. Cam Chancellor retiring because of injuries. Earl Thomas goes to Baltimore and threw away his career. Mm-hmm. The only consistent pieces that were left were Wilson and Wagner. And you know how I feel about Wilson. But if Wilson wins the second Super Bowl, maybe my opinion changes to Wilson.
Mm-hmm. And this is where I think we now looking back, Monday morning quarterbacking, we realize the overrated ability of Russell Wilson. How you had a all-time defense surrounding him and great weapons on offense. And we allowed that to make us believe that he was a great quarterback. And people were going to say, well, we never believed. There was talks about Russell Wilson. Even I said of a top 3, top 5 quarterback ever since he won a Super Bowl. And we now realize with Pete Carroll, unless he turns this thing around, that he was a product of the system, that he was managed around, and that they played to his abilities and hit his weaknesses perfect. And Pete Carroll deserves credit for this, because it's hard to do that with a quarterback. I'm going to show only your bright spots. I'm going to hide a lot of your weaknesses, which we have discovered are a lot, especially leadership, especially, big game scenarios now. And particularly with what we've seen in primetime games in this year, being able to win the big game in big moments. Mm-hmm. And he was reliant on all the weapons on offense and that defense.
I can't think of one clutch moment in Russell Wilson's career.
Me neither.
That's the thing. And we see all these big catches in playoff games and Super Bowls. It's all the receivers making the plays, and we think of the defense, a stout defense. The most clutch thing was him being intercepted by Malcolm Butler. That was Malcolm Butler. That was the most clutch thing ever. Not him, Butler.
And the thing is, Pete Carroll protected Russell Wilson after that Super Bowl. Yes. Pete Carroll said, that's my call. Well, Pete Carroll's, not calling plays. He wasn't the play caller. So how am I supposed to blame Pete Carroll? Pete Carroll did a great job protecting his quarterback, is the point I'm making.
Mm-hmm. And also, people forget that Russell Wilson's weapons around him on offense got better. Mm-hmm. Like, he got Jimmy Graham.
On that year, yep.
He got Jimmy Graham, who is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, I think.
Maybe not first ballot because how his career ended, but he's definitely a Hall of Famer. Had one of the best tight end primes ever, and that was the end of the tight end prime.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like after that the Super Bowl the year before, there were very high expectations. They were looking at the Seahawks arguably being the Patriots, the new Patriots. Like, they have a legacy coming up. And then all of a sudden that was shut down within 2 years.
Yeah.
So that's why I put them
at
number 3.
That's a really good pick, John. Zorn, who you got for number 3?
I know you're all going to call me wrong. And here's the thing. I don't care.
Okay.
Damn all of you before me if you call me wrong for this. But this one's personal, so I had to put it 3, and we're going to get into it. The reason why I say this is because this team was by several analysts was projected to be in the Super Bowl with the Packers. And I was like, okay, I like the pick. And this pick is I believe it's the 2018 Jacksonville Jaguars. Year after 10-6 after Saxville.
Good pick.
When we expected them to return with that almighty defense and an offense that was solid. They knew what they were. They weren't going to play out of their means. And I just want to read some of the players that, I loved and brought me some highs. Guys like Leonard Fournette. Blake Bortles, a lot of people hate him. I loved him when he was doing his thing. You got guys on the defense. Yannick Ngakoue, Calais Campbell. You're welcome for that, right? He's now a Raven.
Thank you.
Miles Jack.
Appreciated.
Telvin Smith before he got arrested. Jalen Ramsey, AJ Boye. I could go on. But the next year we see a purge. The entire cleansing. Jalen Ramsey gets traded. My guy, that's the jersey I own. Yannick Ngakoue traded. Other jersey I own, right? This is ridiculous. Here's our starting quarterback.
You want to get a Trevor Lawrence?
Gardner Minshew. And I love porn star Minshew. I love the stash. But it ain't it. Tiger King best. Leonard Fournette was still there, but he was never the same. After following years, they traded him. DJ Chark, Chris Conley. I know some people look at decently a Chark. No, overrated product. He was just hyped for no reason. It broke my heart. Secondary ripped apart. I don't want to talk too much about it. But the reason why I say this is this. The Jaguars haven't had much winning seasons in the 2010s. And when 2016 came along, we thought this is a young team.
This was 17, right? This was 17.
This was 2018. But in the 2010s, they didn't have much going for them. There was a rebuild throughout most of that. And then we get not greatest. We get a good look at what this team could be. The best moment I have with them is when they beat the Steelers in a shootout. When they absolutely went in there, underdogs, took them out.
So only time that year, I believe the offense scored more than 31 points.
Yes. And I haven't been the same. I'm still in pain. I'm still recovering. I've seen my therapist twice a week for my Jaguars, and it's breaking my heart. But I'm gonna stick with them because they're my boys, and they're my boys. But Ray, I want to hear John, I want to hear what you guys think about my pick because I know it's biased, but it hurts me to my soul.
I considered this. This is a big one because that Jacksonville defense on paper, it will not do the justice because they gave up 3 big games that year that make their defense not look like it's among the all-time greats. But it was. They gave up, I think, 40 points in week 1 and then never gave up more than 28 the rest of the year until the playoffs.
Till Steelers game, yes.
That was a great defense, and the fact that I think they got a little arrogant with some of the moves they made. And let's be honest, that year, the next year when they didn't do well, they threw Blake Bortles to the Wolves. Blake Bortles was a competent quarterback.
Yes.
He was not a all-pro quarterback, but he was who he was. And you threw him to the Wolves like he was the reason. The reason was the terrible personnel decisions that y'all made. So to think that Blake Bortles is the reason why you guys were so terrible, no, because look what Gardner Minshew did there. And I liked Minshew, but Minshew went 1-15.
Yes.
So you're going to throw Bortles under the bus. But that's a great pick, Andrew. They were very disappointing. I really thought that your team was going to be maybe not the team of the decade, but be formidable for the foreseeable future, especially with that defense.
And I forget who there were several analysts who had them going to either to
The playoffs or the AFC Championship.
AFC Championship. I've seen even Super Bowl with them and the Packers. I mean, it might be Colin Cowherd, but they were projected to be a deep playoff team, and they went 5-11 and then traded everyone and broke my heart. It was the worst breakup I've ever been through, breaking me away from those players, my jerseys. And since I've been heartbroken.
But kept Doug Marrone, too.
And they kept Doug Marrone. Lovely. But I will say this, and even though I'm mad at y'all, I like Trevor Lawrence. T-Law gonna get it done. I know we building something great down in Jacksonville now, and it ain't clicking like I thought it was, and it should be. And I'm gonna start coming for heads soon. Doug Peterson, I like you, but you gotta start winning some games.
It's year 1, man.
It's year 1. I know, but I
Protect him.
we need the line. The line gotta step up. Damn it, I'm tired of it.
You need to talk to Trent Blake or Ballack this offseason.
Yes,
Because here's the moves you need to make if you're the Jaguars, and we'll get into it later. Just line,
Yes.
and maybe a big name receiver. But John, do you have any thoughts on the 2018 Jacksonville Jaguars?
I thought both of you guys made a great point because the Jacksonville Jaguars were not a winning team in the majority of the 2010s.
2010s, yeah.
And that's really what did it. You had all the weapons there. The defense was amazing. Why are you throwing a monkey wrench in there and just screwing everything up? Why are you making these terrible moves? It looks like they're trying to rebuild again.
Yeah,
For
which was
what?
like, why don't we retool instead of trading away everyone?
For what? You threw away extremely valuable assets.
If you get rid of Blake Bortles, right? It's
Totally different.
But I'm saying, if you get rid of Blake Bortles, you have to replace him. You don't get rid of Blake Bortles and say that's the reason, but then trade Jalen Ramsey, Yannick Ngakoue, and Calais Campbell. You don't make that move. So, yeah, I agree with you, John. You ready for my 3?
Yes.
And it's one near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
Everyone talks about, what a terrible ending it was this year. New York stand up. But it is not this year. I'm going with the 2019 New York Yankees. The reason for this is because 2018, Garrett Cole was one of the best pitchers in baseball, arguably the best. Many people think he should have won that Cy Young. The Yankees go out and get him. The Astros, who have been their rival for the previous 3 years and are still their rival, you go out and get their second best pitcher who would be an ace on 28 other teams. And that year you lose to the Astros in the playoffs. It's unforgivable. You can't, and on top of it, that was when we started to see the decline of guys like Greg Bird was out of the picture at that point. Gary Sanchez lost all confidence in Aaron Boone. Gleyber Torres gave up on Aaron Boone. And that team just was destined. That was supposed to be the year they made the leap. And I think people talk about how disappointing 2022 was. 2019 was the start of the disappointment that has led the entire Aaron Boone era.
Don't get me started on Aaron Boone. I feel like that's going to be a recurring thing with the rest of our list because
I have a feeling it is too.
Aaron Boone, you have 60 seconds to tell me why this man should still have a job.
At least we know he listens.
Come on, man. I agree. That year was the start of the downfall of just year after year of disappointment. But I won't say too much because I will eventually get into that more.
I just think that's the year where you get Garrett Cole. There can't be any more excuses. You got the guy who's supposed to be the guy.
I will say this. I really do feel bad for Greg Bird. I knew you brought his name up. I gotta give him some.
He would have been
some
really
love.
good if the injuries
He
didn't.
would have been so good. I actually even watched him this year when I was with the Real Riders, and it was when he got waived. It was really sad to seeing how this guy had so much potential and was really expected to be a big part of a team that this team in particular.
He was good enough to force Mark Teixeira out.
Yeah, and it was really sad to see. I didn't see him get waived, and it's like that injury really derailed his career. But there's not much you can do when he wasn't playing the way he used to play. So, respects out to Greg Bird. I will say this team was not as talented as I think the one this year.
I disagree.
I know that's going to be a hot take.
Because the reason it is because you had guys like Gary Sanchez, who was supposed to be the year before, he was a Silver Slugger. He's better than whoever the hell they had catching. Chapman was at the top of his game still. You had Dylan Betances. The bullpen was light years better than it was this year.
Bullpen was, but
Yes,
batting-wise, I would say this team is not as good as this year.
I think it's equal. I think it didn't have the holes.
Yes.
It didn't have the holes this lineup had. It was more left-handed. They had some bats, and on top of it, this felt like more of a cohesive team of homegrown and getting pieces. Not like this year where we're going to bring in guys because we think they might hit, like the Carpenters and the Donaldsons.
Yes.
The reason I put it here is it's disappointing because of what followed as well. The last 3 years have been disappointing for the Yankees, to where this one's going to be new. Because if the Yankees win next year, we'll forget about 2022. But we won't forget about 2019 as much because the Astros beat you. And, I mean, if the Astros win the World Series this year, I mean, like I said, you can't talk about sign stealing anyway. But 2019 was thrown on the rug as an excuse because they still thought it was sign stealing and stuff. No, they got beat. So I do think 2019 was more talented.
I will say this real quick. There's 4 guys I want to name that really aren't talked about for this team that show how Aaron Boone is incompetent.
Say it again.
Gleyber Torres, Tyler Wade, Miguel Andujar, Greg Bird. Now, the Greg Bird one we can go to injuries, but the rest of them we can go and say this was mismanagement by Aaron Boone by not growing 4 talented guys who were bats in this lineup, who everyone saw as being the next big Yankees for this team. And we haven't seen Torres, yes, but he's not a starter or a consistent starter, which he should be. He's kind of in and out of lineup like every 3 days. They don't play as much as I believe they should, and his potential, I think, is great. Tyler Wade goes to L.A., and then you bring him back, and now he's in AAA. Why? And then Miguel Andujar, he got waived this year. Miggy. He talked about he wanted to be traded. He is a bat, at least he can play third, he can play outfield. And he's a bat that's consistent, good average, and he can hit home runs. We talked about Miguel Andujar when he was, I believe he was in the race, rookie of the year, his rookie year.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And what has happened to him since? It's been mismanaged talent by Boone. And that's what infuriates me is that this team, yes, was a great team on paper, but also a great team in the farm system as well. And it wasn't, and your young guys were not treated properly.
I agree. Well, John, you want to give us your number 2?
So my number 2 is actually, you might disagree with me because it was a very injury-ridden season, but I think the 2021-22 Los Angeles Lakers. And I think that you actually opened my eyes a couple weeks ago when we first started having this conversation of whether LeBron's the GOAT or whether Michael Jordan's the GOAT. LeBron hasn't really done much in LA.
I know he's won a title, but it was a COVID-shortened season.
Yeah, and they were expected to win, I think it was like 58 games that season. They won 33.
If I can piggyback with you real quick, because my number 2 is also the 2021-22 Los Angeles Lakers.
Okay.
And so let's just tag team this.
Okay.
I think that the reason that this is so bad is when they traded for Russell Westbrook, people were talking about, who do you got? The Warriors or the Lakers? It was a big thing. Who's going to win the West?
I was taking Lakers.
But everyone was screaming that the Lakers were good, and I was not one of those people. But I'm like, they'll be a 4th seed, 3 seed. The West is tough. To not make a playoffs in an era with a play-in game when LeBron James is supposed to be, by a lot of people's measure, the GOAT, the greatest ever. And the fact that LeBron James is there, Anthony Davis is there. Now, LeBron's responsible for the construction of that roster. There's no getting around that. But the fact that all those guys were there, they were pretty deep last year.
Dwight was there. Melo was there.
Malik Monk could
I was going
shoot.
to say Malik Monk.
Austin Reeves had a nice year.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't make the playoffs? You don't make the playoffs. You don't make a play-in game. In a time when 10 teams from each conference get a chance to make the playoffs through the play-in tournament, and you can't make a playoff game?
11th in the West. 11th. I could never believe that LeBron would ever be on a team that was under 5 or 6.
This team in particular, Rob Pelinka, if he didn't get re-upped, should be done. You gave away all your talent to Washington, who really hasn't done much with them, but that's another topic. In exchange for Russell Westbrook, when there was questions around if Westbrook should come in. Because of what we had seen in OKC, he looked pretty decent in Washington.
He had a great year in Washington.
He looked pretty, everyone was like, he's done. No. But when you know that when you have, and I would argue 2 big men, LeBron James, he's a 3.
He's not a big man.
The 1, but
he's not a big
the
man.
way he plays, as he can shoot, but early LeBron's always been, I'm going to get to the basket. Mm-hmm. AD, yes, he can shoot, but we've seen recently not anymore from the 3. And this thing is, and you're going to bring in a guard who is not known to shoot well from 3 and is ball dominant, so is LeBron. And his triple-doubles come off of rebounds, but you already have a really good rebounding in AD when he's healthy. And that's going to be good for spacing. And that's going to allow you to win games. For the bubble Lakers, what won them that finals?
Defense and spacing.
Defense and spacing. You had guys who LeBron's going to do his thing. I'll get the ball out to you. Shoot. You don't need another playmaker. You need guys who do your job. When you're on the court, do what you're told to do. Do your role. If that role is 3 and D, it's 3 and D. If that's in the post getting rebounds like a Dwight Howard and then Danny Green, playing great D and shooting, do that. And that's the problem. You bring in Westbrook when you have all these voids. You need shooting. You need a rebounding when an AD is either hurt or he needs rest. And you bring in a guy who, yes, can rebound, but he's not a post player, and he can't shoot. It didn't make sense. They gave up all their young talent to acquire him, and now when we look at it, many people think LeBron James will never win another finals or he's going to leave the Lakers. And we're talking about
he's not going to leave.
And we're talking about a trade. We're going to have to trade Russell Westbrook with picks just to get him off the roster for maybe decent talent at best or just to free up room for next year. So they have what they have left is they only have 2 first-round picks left, which is their 2027, I believe, and 2029.
I will say this. Russell Westbrook was not very good in that season. He got scapegoated. Everyone acted like he was the only issue. The issue was Anthony Davis did not play like the player you traded for. LeBron James is putting up all his points in garbage time. He's not the same player he was. And to think that team was going to compete for a title a year in retrospect, in hindsight, is shocking. Because I don't think they'll make the playoffs this year. And they have the same roster plus Pat Bev.
And it's now been reported that Russell Westbrook will be coming off the bench, at least for tonight.
And Russell Westbrook is a Hall of Fame player. Mm-hmm. He's a Hall of Fame player.
Absolutely, no doubt.
And let's be honest, if he played with Michael Jordan instead of LeBron James, people would still blame Michael Jordan. People would blame him for Russell's play. They'd be like, well, if he brought him to the Bulls the way that LeBron brought to the Lakers, it would be, well, dude, MJ, you brought him here. With LeBron, it's just, why can't LeBron get help? I'm tired of the narrative that all his teammates are bums. Mm-hmm. He's played with like 8 Hall of Famers. Mm-hmm. I mean, you got to be kidding me. Mm-hmm. But it's disappointing. They threw Frank Vogel under the bus because what's he going to do? And then they hired Darvin Ham, and they start the year 0-4. So I think it's kind of a disgrace because this list, I wouldn't want to pick teams that have already won a championship, but LeBron has not solidified his stance as the GOAT.
I don't think he ever will.
And because of this, he probably will never ever.
And I don't think even if he does get another chip, he should, because of the disaster that's happening right now. And now this is going to affect the Lakers for the next decade. When LeBron's done, when AD, I don't think AD is ever going to be back to the player he once was. And when Russell's inevitably kicked out, which is happening shortly, ladies and gentlemen, this Lakers team is left in dismay. And what, Rob Pelinka, he'll be let go. Jeannie Buss, she might sell the team. Who knows if they got nothing going on. For the next decade, there's 2 first-round picks, and they're talking about trading them to get Westbrook off. It's bad.
John, you got any
This is disastrous.
You got any other points here, John?
We also haven't talked about how much money they are putting into Russ, LeBron, and Anthony Davis.
All max players.
Oh my God.
It's hurting their depth this year.
Russ $44 million, LeBron $41 million, AD $35 million.
That's why they couldn't go out and re-sign some of the depth because their money got andied up this year. Russ is making more than he did last year. Anthony Davis making more than he did last year. LeBron making more than he did last year. So they can't go get depth. They couldn't keep Malik Monk. They couldn't keep guys like that.
And AD, I love the brow. But when you're sitting out half a season, what's $35 million going to do? Come on.
I think we're finding out during his tenure in LA that Anthony Davis was a really good player. Anthony Davis was overrated at many points in his career.
Well, I think that he was always a defensive force because even in that year, he was putting up 23 points, 10 rebounds, damn near 10 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2.3 blocks.
But he was not as efficient as he had been. The problem is Anthony Davis, when he was in New Orleans, put up 28 on 63% shooting, which is just insane numbers for the volume that he was getting. Problem is when you play on a team like that, you're going to get looks because you're not the guard. Usually when you're a guard on bad teams, you have bad efficiency. He was a big man on a bad team. He had Drew Holiday feeding him the ball. And then when they got Boogie, they were focusing on Boogie in the paint and allowed him to hit more jumpers. This is the 21-22 Lakers is a hodgepodge of has-beens. Especially, we didn't even talk about Carmelo Anthony on that team. Carmelo Anthony has been.
Yeah.
We didn't even mention him. Avery Bradley. Just
even DeAndre Jordan.
DJ Augustine. It's an all-star lineup from 2014.
That's honestly the perfect way to put it.
Zoran, who's your two? Since we just got our two out of the way.
It's this year's Yankees, ladies and gentlemen. It's my two.
Do I get no input in this?
You get no input. You
Okay.
can have input because I know it's your one.
Okay.
I'm just going to say this. I want to give an analogy. See, halfway through the year, we could smell and taste a World Series. We knew what was coming. We could see the greatness.
I didn't.
The wins, the cohesiveness, the offense. The best way to put it is it's like Thanksgiving dinner. You're in the family room just watching football. Ma's in the kitchen, she's cooking up the turkey. You could smell it. You could be like, ready to eat. I'm ready to go. I'm hungry.
I wish we had video. I rolled my eyes so hard.
And then, you hear the ding. Oh, turkey's out. She's grabbing it. Why are you going to the microwave and getting a damn box dinner out, woman?
Why did that sound oddly sexual? You went ding. And then said, grab the turkey. And I was like, what the hell is he talking about?
Ray, get your mouth out of the gutter. I'm tired of it.
I don't even know if I would call it that. She burnt the whole turkey.
She burnt the whole turkey.
She burnt the turkey.
And now we don't know if Judge come back. Boone's still there. This ain't good, ladies and gentlemen. And if they do bring back Judge, we're going to have the highest payroll in baseball. More than the Dodgers. I can't. We got swept. I love the Yankees. I'm just heartbroken. I'm heartbroken. You guys can discuss this. I'm tired of it. I've already had my discussion about this year's Yankees, and Ray been throwing in my face, hurting me even more when I'm in pain. Ray, go ahead. Go ahead, Ray.
I think what's disappointing about this season is when you look at it, they started the year so hot and ended the last 70 games with a record 10 games below 500. And I think at that point, I knew that's because I told you at the beginning of the year that I thought they were going to win the World Series. In the beginning of the year, I did. But once you get to that point, where you just are blowing teams out and you get to the point where you're just, being a great team and you're so far above everybody and you end the year, like they had a 30-game lead in the AL East that shrunk to, I think, 3 at one point. Mm-hmm. I knew they weren't going to win the World Series. So the end of the year isn't as disappointing to me as 2019, where I think there was a year where that was a year where the whole year they were consistent. They were more consistent because they were more cohesive. The pieces, I think, fit better. I think the bullpen, which we're finding out in this day of baseball, is the most important thing on a team. You can give me lineup, you can give me your ace. You need an ace, but you need a good bullpen. Otherwise, forget about it. I think the Phillies are going to find it out soon. But I think overall, I did not expect this team to go far, so I'm also not a Yankees fan, but at the same time, I didn't find this disappointing.
I just want to bring up the two big guys real quick. Mm-hmm. Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge had a phenomenal regular season. He was getting walked like every other at-bat.
Rough postseason.
a 139 average from the guy who hit 62 home runs and broke Maris's record, the AL record.
I believe it was on like 15 strikeouts too.
Yeah, it was 15.
Ugh.
Stanton,
I don't want to think about John.
188. These are the two guys who are supposed to be the face of the Yankees right now, minus Garrett Cole, obviously. But Garrett Cole's not who he was when we acquired him. What are you doing in the postseason now? This is why Aaron Boone needs to grow a pair, and he needs to figure it out. This is why I have some beef with Aaron Boone. I think that he's a pushover, and I think that the Yankees altogether are... I love the Yankees. I've always been diehard Yankees since I was little. I think the Yankees are starting to become a cash cow, and we're more worried about people buying a name on a jersey because they hit a bunch of dingers. We got Rizzo, Donaldson.
Donaldson didn't play well. It was like he had a resurgent year, and just like we get him, and it's like, okay, Donaldson.
No. Donaldson had a resurgent month of May.
I was going to say, Donaldson still ended up with a 222 average.
Yeah.
And he only hit 15 dingers.
Yeah, and I think he had...
What's going on?
You can get that from a player playing in AAA.
Yeah.
Yes. I also am very disappointed. I think that Aaron Judge with 62 home runs. If you saw a guy with 62 home runs back in... We can even bring it back to 2019. The amount of RBIs that he should be 150, around there. He was pretty much averaging... Half of his RBIs are from home runs alone, if not all of them at this point. I just don't see how you can blow people's minds and everyone's going crazy over Judge and then just completely shit the bed.
I want to say this in terms of the future of this team. I know I didn't say this last week. The fact that Boone looks like he's coming back, and let me know if you agree with this or not. Now Cashman should be put on the hot seat with Boone.
100%.
Agreeing with Boone to the point where he's allowing this man that has been one of the most disappointing 5-year stretches of any team ever to come back. You're now, guess what? I know Brian Cashman's going to be a Hall of Fame general manager one day from that dynasty. Well, guess what? That dynasty ended 15 years ago. So you are now in cahoots with this dude. So you better find a way to make the pieces get some money off the payroll so you can go out and get another big-time reliever. Go out and get a guy to play short. Go out and get some of these holes filled. That way you can win a World Series next year. If not, if they fall short like this again, they both need to go, and the Yankees need to decide what they want to do going forward and move on from the Cashman era.
I also think that Chapman was a very big disappointment as well.
That's one I not talked about enough is Chapman, and because when we look at Chapman, growing up, Chapman was one of I would say arguably my favorite pitcher to watch just because of his speed. And the fact that he's left off the roster, I get it, he wasn't having a good year. What is going on, man? Like Chapman, what for so long was the guy, breaking records, pitch speed wise. No one could touch him, and he doesn't look like the same guy anymore. It's you pay him all this money.
I think what's important to note with Chapman is, too, relievers are so volatile year to year.
Yes.
That's why we see a great year out of a reliever, and the next year they're bums. Chapman was so good for about 8-9 years, it was due. We saw it with Zach Britton after his first year with the Yankees. He was really good for 3 years. Being a reliever in this league is so volatile that I think that's what you need to expect. So I'm so sorry for my two friends, my boys who are Yankee fans. My heart goes out to you. Johnny boy, what is your number one? Realization.
That was my number one.
We went through that whole thing and you couldn't have said that was your number one too?
That was my number one.
I'm about to disappoint even more with this.
Well, I want to know real quick. Give me a brief summation. Or did you say enough?
I don't think that we had the depth that we needed in the bullpen. But I think we had enough, especially with the sluggers that we have in the lineup. I think that, you're looking at people like Clay Holmes wasn't bad. Peralta wasn't bad. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. Lucas L. He wasn't bad.
Oh, you're talking about Loizica.
Loizica, yes, thank you. And even our starters weren't terrible. Nestor Cortez.
Well, beginning of the year, Nestor Cortez looked phenomenal.
Yeah.
Off the charts.
The problem is, John, I understand you're saying they should have got there, That team was not better than the Astros. And I'll give you a couple reasons why. The Astros, other than Yordan Alvarez, don't hit 50 home runs like the Yankees do. They're not as home run dependent. The Astros bullpen is better than the Yankees bullpen and has more postseason experience than the Yankees bullpen. The starters in the Astros are better than the Yankees starters. So when you look at it from that perspective, and the Astros did what they needed to do at the deadline. Cashman whiffed at this year's deadline.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So,
well, he had the dream team.
Yeah.
I also want to mention that Judge with a 3.11 average during the regular season. Very happy with that. The next best was 261 by someone we traded for. I forget his first name. It's a Kinner dude with the 2 last names.
IFK.
Kiner Falefa, who they shit on the whole second half of the year because he didn't hit home runs. You knew what you were getting. You were getting a good glove, which is the problem of why you wanted to DH Torres until you found out Stanton couldn't play the field. This is why you got Kiner Falefa to help the defense, which had been bad the previous year. Mm-hmm. But you knew what he was. He was a gold glover who will hit 1 home run a year. Yeah. You knew who he was. So...
And Romeo as well was the next.
Yes.
Can I say something real quick before we transition?
Yes.
Is your number one been mentioned by any of us yet?
No.
Okay.
Has yours?
Yes, I'm going to go next. Okay. 2021, 2020 Lakers. That's my number one. And I know we're going to say, well, the Yankees should be over them, Andrew. The fact that the team in the NBA with the most media coverage is the Lakers, and the fact that they missed the playoffs, I love your point about the playing games. 10 teams can make the playoffs now. And this team is 0-4. And that's the only coverage we're really getting on the NBA is an 0-4 team because of the number 2 player of all time. And if those of you who say LeBron James is 1, you don't know anything about basketball. You don't. You're a fanboy. You're a groupie to LeBron. I'm tired of it.
It's because they grew up with LeBron.
They grew up with LeBron.
And the media is... I think LeBron's what he does socially, people who agree with his politics and agree with some of the stuff he does socially, because a lot of what he does, like giving back to the community, making schools, by all accounts, LeBron is a good dude.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But they mix that up with basketball, and it's totally different. If we're going to do nice guy, then a lot of people would be in the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm. And I really want ESPN and Stephen A to stop talking about this team because they're irrelevant. Yeah, there's drama, and that's cool, but I'm tired of it. This team disappointed so much last year. I don't want any coverage until they're close to 500. I'm tired of it. LeBron, you're not the GOAT. And you know what? The AD trade doesn't look good because AD they could have gotten in free agency. Russell Westbrook, you gave up all your young talent to get. Now you got to trade future picks to get rid of him because you want the contract off the books. I'm tired of it. It's ridiculous.
But talk about the expectations.
Expectations were, that's the thing. A big 3. LeBron's, third big 3? This was the third big 3, I believe, right? With Heat, back to Cavs, and then now with the Lakers.
Yeah, it's a good way of looking at it.
He had 3 big 3s. And I'm tired of LeBron being brought up as the GOAT. If you keep on doing it, you're going to lose. NBA viewership's going to go down. Regular season viewership is already, abysmal. It's only because China loves basketball that they feed into it, and I get it. But you got to stop talking about losing teams. You got to stop talking about guys who are underperforming because no one wants to hear about it. Yeah, at first it makes for good drama, but when you continue the drama, it gets repetitive. And I'm tired of this team.
They're going to continue it because they put all the eggs in the LeBron James basket.
Mm-hmm. And they need to start marketing more superstars. They really do. The NBA. LeBron, I get it. LeBron's the best player you've had. In the past, 20 years of the league.
I'm not trying to be like this. Why don't you what's the reason you don't market Giannis Antetokounmpo and Nikola Jokic?
Yes.
It's because they're foreign players. Mm-hmm. It's because they're foreign players. That's the reason they're not marketed, and it's kind of bullcrap because what's the guy's name coming? Victor Wembanyama, whatever the hell his name is. Mm-hmm. Consensus number 1 pick next year. He's a foreign guy. He's not going to get, as a rookie, he could be MVP, and he's not going to get as much attention as LeBron or even Curry, and I love Steph Curry.
The fraud. And I'm tired of it. LeBron James, yes, you've had a great career. You're the number 2 player of all time, and I do like what you do, for the youth with your school, with outreach and charity in Cleveland and even in LA. But I'm sorry.
By all accounts,
the media coverage you're getting is not deserved, and you're hurting the league now more than you're helping. So that's my number one. I'm tired of the Lakers. I'm tired of hearing about them. I'm heartbroken with my Astros. I'm sorry, Astros. Oh my God, I'm tired.
You're an Astro fan now.
Yankees.
Flip-flopping, flip-flopping going
Yankees.
on.
I'm tired. It's been a long day. You know how heartbroken. The three teams that were top three are as a team I hate media coverage wise. My favorite, baseball team, and then my favorite football team. It's exhausting. I'm tired.
Get to the number one, and this is the real number one, because I am stunned this is not on anybody else's list. The 2020-2021 Brooklyn Nets. With Kyrie Irving, a healthy Kevin Durant, and a trade for James Harden. Not to mention the outside pieces, like a Blake Griffin. Not to mention Bruce Brown. But Nick Claxton. Just a lot of talent there. Many people when that trade was made were like, why do we even have the NBA? Why do we have the season? Just give them the trophy. It was a foregone conclusion that the Nets would make the finals, and most likely conclusion, the Nets would win it. No. The Nets losing 7 games to the Milwaukee Bucks after having a 2-0 lead. Kyrie Irving, this is the start of him deciding whether or not he didn't want to play.
With COVID, yeah.
James Harden battled an injury in the playoffs, but at the same time, Kevin Durant scored 49 points and then 43 points in games 6 and 7, and you couldn't win both those games with the talent around. That's pretty embarrassing. On top of it, James Harden, who was traded 10 games into that season, the following year, he's traded, 2 months into the year for Ben Simmons. So this team that was projected to be a dynasty, and we already wrote in pen the fact that they were going to win the finals, don't even make a conference finals. They lose in the second round to the Milwaukee Bucks. And then they ship out James Harden, who I thought was their second best player at that point, for Ben Simmons, a guy who also doesn't want to play. The pair with Kyrie Irving is disgraceful. And that was the end. That might end what we know as the modern super team. I think that's what we're not realizing. That's why this offseason, a lot of teams didn't try to form more super teams. I know people say Rudy Gobert, that's not a super team. No. Rudy Gobert is not a dynamic guy like any of those three guys are. Rudy Gobert plays defense and grabs the ball when it hits the backboard. Mm-hmm. The problem with this Nets team is the disappointment is so large because this was the opportunity for Kyrie Irving to get his ring without LeBron. This was the opportunity for James Harden to win his first ring. Opportunity for Kevin Durant to win a ring without Curry. And all of them failed. This was an opportunity for Blake Griffin to get a ring. This was a stacked team. I'm kind of shocked you guys didn't have it on your list because this might be the team that is the death nail for super teams because it's showing that super teams aren't going to work.
Can I say why I didn't have it on my list?
Yeah.
Because this year, if it doesn't happen this year, there is a chance for redemption for at least Kyrie and KD. But it's the last year. All the chips are in. They went all in, and you have to do it this year. And I really hope they do because as much as we give Kevin Durant, heat for being a snake and Kyrie for being, emotionally careless after he demanded the trade from LeBron, who was the best thing that happened to you was LeBron coming back to Cleveland and getting you a chip. We haven't seen much. We haven't seen much from these. Yes, KD's the only exception because he's still arguably when he's healthy, he is the best guy in the league.
Where I disagree with your point there is you can't say that you don't want Brooklyn on there because this year they might do it when they lost Harden and got Simmons. Because I'm talking about the team with Harden. Because Simmons isn't a Hall of Famer.
No, but I think Simmons is a better fit looking back than Harden.
Let me finish this point. Harden, Irving, and Durant. All three are top 10 or 12 players of the 2010s, unarguably.
Yes.
You might say Irvin is 11 or 12. I think he's top 10, maybe 9 or 10.
I think he's top 10.
But they're all three are top 10 of that decade. And you are going to put the 2007 Patriots on your list and not this team?
Yes.
Makes no sense.
Makes 100% sense.
The reason why I didn't think of this team was because like you said, basketball's kind of changing. This is the end of super teams. I think that super teams are almost half of the teams in the NBA at this point. I wouldn't say half, but I would say there's a lot more super teams.
Everyone is trying to form their own version of a big three like
yes.
LeBron did in Miami ever since.
Yes, but I feel like at the same time, we're looking at... That's why the Lakers made it for me, because we're looking at... These are higher expectations for the Lakers than it is for the Nets. The Nets were never good before.
No, but the thing is, you had Durant and Irving, and I think what you're seeing now is the league is going to go back to duos and role players, 3-and-D guys, 6-mans, traditional basketball. I think everyone's saying the NBA's changed and it's never coming back. I think you're seeing it. I think you're going to see it's going to come back. I think the super team's going to die out here soon, and the Brooklyn Nets of 2020, 2021 are the reason why.
I know I can agree with the Brooklyn Nets being the reason super teams die, and to be more of a homegrown drafting and also smaller acquisitions of free agency. Unless you're like a team with nothing, you go out and get a superstar.
I just think it's completely ridiculous neither of you had it on your list.
Well, because like I said, there is hope. I do have hope in this team.
But it's not the same team. Blake Griffin's not there. James Harden's not there. Bruce Brown isn't there. Paul Millsap isn't there.
But at the same time, sorry, go ahead.
But the team's different.
I would say this. When you have, and we are seeing this with the Lakers, when you're having 3 scorers, it doesn't work. When you have 2 scorers and a defensive-minded player, there is hope that will work.
Here's why that point is wrong, is misconstrued. Mm-hmm. Harden and Durant played together before and were very successful. And on top of it, Irvin's more a ball handler, but he also is a guy who can play off the ball, unlike Westbrook. So on paper, it is the perfect fit. And throughout much of the year, even though they battled injuries, looked like even though they were second in the conference, which is still unacceptable with that squad, I still thought they were going to get it done, and they didn't. And everyone thought they were going to get it done. Don't act like you didn't. Everyone thought the Nets were going to get it done. At the beginning of
the year, yes, but when we got to the playoffs, we saw this team had only played, I think it was a little over 10 games together.
But when
we knew it wasn't going to work.
But when they got to 2-0 on the Bucks, you thought it's over. The series is going to be swept.
I can see that. Well, I'm telling you, when your big 3 has only played I think it was 17. I'm correct. 17
but Harden and Durant
together.
Don't need that much time to gel because they played together, and all these guys played together on Team USA. All these guys played together on teams in the offseason. All these guys know how to play together. What I'm saying is when you have those 3 guys who can all play off the ball a little bit, who all can score at will, that is why they are so disappointing.
I also kind of agree with Andrew. Sorry.
When
it comes to, I still see the potential. I don't think that this is the defining moment for them. Because we look at them, they're still relatively young. They're not, 26, 27 anymore. But
Durant's 35.
I still think he's the best scorer in the world. You can't guard him.
But with LeBron now playing to what? He's age 38 season?
He's 37.
Yeah.
Totally different. LeBron puts $1 million a year in his body.
But also Durant's not the player LeBron is where he relies on being physical for, scoring.
Yes.
And so what I would like to say to you is this, is that yes, I completely understand why you put this team there. And I can see why you give me crap for not putting them on there. But here's what I'll say is they're my pick to come out of the East this year.
If they don't, they should be your number 1.
If they don't, I won't say 1. I would say probably 3. I bumped down.
They are more disappointing than that Yankees team.
I would put them on the list, absolutely.
I don't know about the Yankees team.
Dude, it's a all-time...
No, because the Yankees play showed that this team should have been a World Series team.
The problem is, Zoran...
The Brooklyn Nets play has not shown that with that team because they only played 17 games
The problem
together.
is the Yankees didn't go out... If they would have got Mookie Betts, yes, but they didn't make a move like this where you get a big 3. Stanton's been there, but Stanton's not the player he was in 2019. Stanton isn't. These are 3 guys who were supposed to be cross-secting towards the end of their prime, but still in their prime, and couldn't get it done. But
I think you gotta understand what John was saying. It comes back to 3 scorers, and that's what they do. They score. Only guy who maybe does a little different is Kyrie with assists. Mm-hmm. But primarily,
Harden can pass the ball too. He's an underrated passer.
He is. He definitely is. But these guys are known for scoring. The best shooting guard scorer, the best, I would say, small forward scorer, maybe next to LeBron. And then a guy who is just so skilled with the ball and scores, though. He's a scoring point guard, not traditional point guard. Part of us knew it wouldn't work, especially when we saw in the playoffs.
No, it didn't. Stop it.
They played 17 games.
Doesn't
right?
matter.
It does matter because if you can't.
Can I finish this point?
No, because you're interrupting me. Because here's the point: when you don't play together, we don't see the product.
You're acting like you did not think they were going to be good.
No, we all knew they would be good.
Everyone thought they were going to win it all, Zorn. You can't say they didn't. Every single person would have told you after that trade they were going to win it all. That's why I'm saying it's disappointing, because it's ending the super team narrative that just because you have the best team doesn't mean you're going to win it all. We're saying the same thing. You're just acting like you never thought they were going to be any good. We all did. You and I both thought they were going to win it all that year.
No, I agree with you on that. But the problem is that I still believe that this year they have a chance for a chip.
They had a better shot that year than this year.
I don't know.
No shot this year.
No, because you now have better spacing with Simmons.
Yes,
you now have these guys who can play.
The play style is completely different.
It's completely different.
Simmons is basically Draymond Green, who is a soft ass dude.
No,
that's basically what he is.
I agree with he's soft, but here's what you got to realize is that team doesn't need 3 scores when you have two of the best, arguably 2 best scores at their position.
Not disagreeing with you. What I'm saying is Ben Simmons will fold under pressure like he did with Joel Embiid.
I agree.
Kyrie Irving, who outside of one shot in Cleveland, will decide he doesn't want to play. And then we'll go from there. They're not winning it all this year. And if they don't win it all, to your point, they should be number 1. They're number 1 on my list for what they were with Harden.
Well, great. It's amazing America's a free country because we can pick who we want to.
But I'm saying, in 20 years, we'll be wondering what could have been with this team. In 20 years.
I agree. And that's been, kind of the narrative around the Nets. You look back with, you look at Paul Pierce and then the Kevin Garnett trade with them and how that dismantled the team. And then they kind of come back in resurgence with, KD, Kyrie, and then,
Don't forget the D'Lo era. You can't. That D'Lo team, bro.
That D'Lo team was a nice lob.
They were
this team.
They were fun, but I'm saying they were just a fun team that wasn't going to go anywhere. They were lucky to be in the playoffs. But you can't discount the era.
This team does have some surroundings of we disappoint, and I agree. I agree with you, and it's a really good point you made. I have to give you props, right? But to me, they're not yet on it. If they don't win, they will. Can you agree with that?
If they win, it changes everything.
Changes everything.
But that is how sure I am they're not going to.
Something I'm just confused about is why you have them as number 1 and not switching them with the Lakers. Because if we're looking at the Lakers, if we just go by numbers,
it's very simple. You want to hear that? It's very simple. Because the Lakers have won a title in the last 3 years. So LeBron, if he didn't win that title, is absolutely number 1. It's a completely failed tenure as a Los Angeles Laker. But none of these guys have won the title with the Nets. That is the main argument I would make.
I can see that.
That's fair.
Well, guys, I think
it wraps it up.
We disagreed, but pretty good list. We want to thank John for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I had a lot of fun.
I'm glad. And
JNasty is always a pleasure.
We'll have JNasty on again for sure.
Oh, yes, sir. I'll be back.
And, I thought we had a good debate here. I was in a lot of pain for most of it. I'm currently, taking some ibuprofen, crying a little bit, tears down my face. But, John, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for coming on.
Yes,
Ray and I love getting heated together on this podcast. It's phenomenal.
It's becoming a recurring theme.
And next time, I promise, I'll be my loudmouth self.
You were a little tame today.
I was a little tame today.
He was tamed by the moment.
Yeah, I have to get into it.
It's his first time.
It's his first time.
Yeah, don't worry. Next time, I got you guys. I'm coming out.
Did we take your podcast virginity?
You were really nice about it, though. You guys were gentle.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that has been it. That is our top 5 list personally from most disappointing teams. Controversial, heated, but I would say well overall, we all had good points today. Any last words, Sean, before we end it?
No, it was fun. Thank you for having me, and I definitely look forward to you guys hearing me again.
Well, that's all for today, folks. Thank you for listening to Sweet Bay Ray and Zorn Hub Show. Tune in every Wednesday for more podcast videos. We'll see what happens at NFL this week. I got some.
I'm excited.
And soon the World Series will be starting. I'm very excited for that too. We're gonna have a lot of talk about baseball and football coming up. But with that, we're gonna end it. Thank you guys for listening, and have a good one.
That was fun. That was very fun.
You have a good time?
Yes, sir. I really liked that.
You're Patriots pick.